Afternoon. How are you on this lovely Monday? What a way to start a Monday. Oh, do we have some things to talk about? Things that'll get your blood boiling. Let's start out with, I don't know. We've had this question for a while. When people are constantly paying into Social Security every week on your paycheck, it's right there on the paycheck stub. Paying into Social Security for your retirement on down the line. Why is the government saying that Social Security is going to run dry within 10 years? Why? We've been paying for years and years and years and generations. And our workers of today are paying in weekly, biweekly, however they get paid. So the pot is always being replenished. If the pot is always being replenished, why are they saying Social Security is going to dry up in 10 years? And some would say, oh, well, because there's not as many workers today as there was back in my generation. Well, hang on. I paid in over 45 years into that pot weekly. Where are my 45 years of payment? It should still be in the pot because I haven't collected it all yet. Okay. Let's hold off on that thought. In other words, the kids under 65 that are paying in right now, they're paying in the pot for themselves, not for us that already retired. Our money should still be sitting there. Okay. Let me stop with that rant. I haven't gotten to that rant yet. Let's talk about Doge. DOGE, ran by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. I think I said Vivek's name right. Okay. They're looking into all the government and doing these audits in every segment of government. You got an awful lot of people screaming about this. Why? Well, look who's screaming about it. That would be my first thing. Let's see who's actually doing the screaming. Huh. Why would they be so upset about wondering where this money is going? Maybe because, I don't know, something to hide, something they don't want disclosed. Let's go over a few things. USAID, United States Aid, all that wonderful assistance that we give other countries. We're so generous and kind, so giving. Let me tell you how giving we are. 15 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. I'm sorry, that's 1.5 million. 70,000 for production of a DEI musical, a musical in Ireland. A DEI. 2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. 47,000 for a transgender opera. 32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. We're going to pay for Guatemala's sex changes and LGBT activation. $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. $6 million to fund tourism. Doesn't Egypt know how to have their own tourism? Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations, even after an inspector general launched an investigation. So now we're using hundreds of thousands of dollars to designate a terrorist organization in order to say that one's a terrorist organization. I'm going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. Buckle up. We're nowhere near done. Millions to Eco Health Alliance, which was involved in research at the Wuhan lab. Millions to the very lab that created COVID. Well, let's just give him more to create the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, that was common sense. Hundreds of thousands of meals that went to Al Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Isn't that the same organization that slit the throats of some of our soldiers? Just putting the puzzle pieces together. So we're feeding them hundreds of thousands of meals. Got to keep their strength up. Funding to print personalized. Okay. Funding to print personalized contraceptives, birth control devices in developing countries. Do your rubbers really need your initials on them? Okay. Funding to print. Oh, I said that. Sorry. Which shook me up. Hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. Let me repeat that. Hundreds of millions to fund irrigation channels, canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production to benefit the Taliban in Afghanistan. The list literally goes on, and it's all been happening for decades. Under President Trump, the waste, fraud, and abuse ends now. And then you wonder why we're 36 trillion, not billion, not million, not trillion, billion. We're 36 trillion dollars in debt. Oh, and it just keeps clicking. It just keeps progressing. If you go on a debt clock, it's ticking up more and more debt so fast you can't hardly watch the numbers. Yeah. They're also going to be looking into Doge is also going to be looking into the veterans, Social Security, taxpayers, federal employees, and federal contractors. We need somebody to look at our veteran affairs. We need to find out why our veterans don't have any funds to be taken care of. Where are all the military funding? Where is it all going? And Social Security, in the beginning, I had said, I paid in over 45 years. And I only got 10 years to go before I can't collect anymore Social Security. Taxpayers, you, taxpayers out there, me, every time you go to the store, every time you go buy gas, every time you go buy anything, even go buy a little pack of gum, paying tax on it. Oh, go order more offline. You pay tax, right? Where's it going? Probably going to tourism in Egypt, sex changes for Guatemala, transgender comic book in Peru, all that farming equipment and stuff like that for heroin and poppy seeds in for the Taliban. That's taxpayer dollars. Yeah. And then they're going to look into federal employees. Good one. Well, let's see. On other YouTube videos, I've heard that, okay, we have Pelosi, and who's the governor of California? Oh, that's Gavin Newsom. Oh, wait. Isn't that Pelosi's nephew? And then we've got, oh, who was it? Was George Soros. Oh, there was a whole line of them. George Soros got a couple of relatives that's in Congress and married to people in these other departments. I don't have it right in front of me, but I can get it if you want. Everybody's intertwined. Isn't that so convenient? That's your federal employees. Yeah. Yep. Let's look at how much money's going to them. And I got a question for you. When Congress, don't quote me on this amount, I'm ballparking it off the top of my head. If Congress makes 225,000 a year or maybe 250,000 a year, I'm guesstimating. Okay. That's what their salary is, right? How is it they walk out with 15 to 20 million dollars at the end of their term? That's if they ever leave their term, Mitch McConnell. How do they become multimillionaires on $250,000 a year? How's that work? That's why we're looking into federal employees. And look at all those buildings in DC, all the federal buildings, and all the workers in all those buildings, which are vacant, by the way, because they're still working at home. Okay, they're supposed to be clocked in for 8 hours, I'm assuming, basically. How much of that 8 hours are they up getting a cup of coffee, going to the bathroom, taking an afternoon nap, messing with their kids, going out for lunch? Going out for lunch, we can't count that. They do that in the building too. How many of those 8 hours are they actually sitting at a desk, running their computers, and doing physical work, collecting a salary off the taxpayers, you and me? Yeah. Who's actually checking on that? DOGE now. Federal contractors. Oh, isn't this one gonna be fun? Yes. Oh, let's just use a name. Let's just use a name. Lindsey Graham. I'm sure he's got nieces, nephews. Oh, John, do you need a job? Hey, come to DC with me. I got a job for you. Here's a cush little office over there. Just sit down over there and make yourself look busy. Oh, you get 250,000 a year for that. I don't actually want you to touch anything, but look busy. Federal contractors. Let's see, we need We need an office remodeled. Wait, Senator, don't you have somebody in your family that maybe scribbles on paper and designs offices just as a hobby? Would would he like to get hired? He could be our architect or our designer. Good money. Yeah. Federal contractors. We need to look into that. Who's linked to who? Here's a good one, getting back to Social Security. Elon's just opening up the books to the Department of Social Security, right? Hasn't really dove deep into it. It's the first thing he found. Seniors, 112 years old and older, every month get their check, their Social Security check, and it's cashed. Do you know how many over 112 seniors there are in the United States every year? 6.5 million. There are 6.5 million seniors, 112 years old and older, getting a monthly Social Security check that is cashed. How many 112-year-old seniors do you know? I had a mother-in-law that passed away a couple of years ago. She made it to 102. We were all shocked. 102. Boy, we celebrated that birthday. But we're not talking 102. We're not talking 105. Those rarity numbers, 105. We're talking 112 and over. There are 6.5 million 112-year-olds and older out there actively getting Social Security checks every month and cashing them. I have a couple of questions. How many deceased seniors are getting Social Security checks monthly and cashing them? It's gotta be an awful lot of them to make 6.5 million. That would be over the age of 112. Wouldn't you say? I realize every state is not ran the same, but I know for a fact that when my father passed away, the funeral home, when I went to make the arrangements, he called the Social Security Administration and reported the death. And at that time, my father's Social Security was immediately stopped. And working in a hospital, do you know every time we had a patient come in the emergency room that ended up passing, the head nurse in the ER, she had to call the state and report the death. Now, if you've got a medical facility calling in a death, and then you've got the funeral director recording the death and calling it in to Social Security, how is it that these people are still getting a Social Security check? Now, that's in my state. In my state, Illinois. I don't know how all your states work. I don't know who is the responsible party to call your state's Social Security office and report the death. I don't know. Is it up to the family? I kind of don't think so. But somewhere out there, they're not getting reported because I cannot see. I would bet everything that there is no 6.5 million 112-year-olds and older out there collecting Social Security. Maybe a few, but certainly not 6.5 million. Here's where my thoughts go with that. Those family members that are home health care workers to their grandparents, great-grandparents who are benefiting from the Social Security. And then that grandparent or great-grandparent passes away. And the death's not reported. Because these home health care workers has been living off of that senior Social Security and doesn't really want to lose it, because then that means that person would have to go find a job. I know people like that. I'm sure we all know people like that. I can name 2 right off the top of my head. And then we've got the other people. And this is why they're looking into taxpayers and Social Security. They're looking for fraud. People claiming Social Security disability that really aren't disabled. I know one of them too. Oh, I'm mentally unfit. I can't. And then goes to see some shyster therapist who says, oh, yes. Excuse me. Not mentally fit or capable to hold a job. Thank you. Here's a little extra on your fee for seeing me. How many Social Security fraud is there? I'm going to tell you what. Social Security, I don't care what state you're in. You got good people and you got bad people in every department, right? We can all agree on that. No matter what department we're talking about. You got the good, you got the bad. I had a sister-in-law that had MS. She was a worker. She was a hard worker. Even after her diagnosis, she worked up until it got impossible. Loss of coordination with her fingers, loss of adequate mobility in her legs, to where she really, it was at the point where she needed a cart that she used to get around. She couldn't walk anymore. For therapy, she would try to keep up on the keyboard to her home computer. She fought and fought and fought for Social Security, disability. As she grew worse and worse and kept getting denials, had lawyers fighting for her, everything. It got to the point to where when my brother would go to work, she couldn't be left unattended because she could no longer. There was no way she could go make herself something to eat. She didn't have the coordination anymore in her hands. And she started to need home health care. This was about 6th or 7th year into the disease. And Social Security was still fighting her. And then it got to the point to where she couldn't feed herself. And the nurses were coming. I think it was twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, to bathe her, feed her. She had to be catheterized. My brother did the best he could. He was working full time, and then when he came home, he did everything for her, from brushing her hair to, showering her. And it got really rough. Now we're getting into the 9th and the 10th year that she had MS. She was bedridden. In order to get her in a chair, the MS Foundation donated to my brother a Hoyer lift. That's that big lift that harnesses you from the bed and then swings over to rest you in a chair. Social Security was still denying her. Thank God for my brother's insurance and the MS Foundation, because Social Security was not going to give funds to her. At this point, she had gotten so bad that the doctors wanted her to go in a nursing home. And she begged my brother, "I'd rather die than go in a nursing home." She goes, "I'd rather die." She goes, "Get a hold of that doctor that does assisted suicides. I want him to help me." Which broke my brother's heart, right? Nobody, regardless of how sick you are, nobody wants their wife to die. But that was her wish rather than go in a nursing home. Well, it just so happened that she was also a severe diabetic, right? And my brother would check her levels all the time and give her the insulin needed. Well, this one night, he went to check her levels, and that was back a while ago. Instead of doing the finger prick for the blood. They do you dip the strip in the urine. Well, he checked her that night, and the reading came out pretty good. So, you know, there was he didn't give her any extra medication because the reading was good. So, he attended to her in bed, and she went to sleep, and he went to check on her a little while later and found out she wasn't sleeping, she was in a coma. He couldn't wake her up. So he called 911, got her to a hospital. They questioned him about the test strips, and he told them, he said, I still got the test strip in the garbage at home. It was normal. I I don't know why she went into a coma. She was coherent and then laid down to rest and went into a coma. She passed away that night. 10 years they waited for Social Security disability, and it never got approved. Do you know when it got approved? It got approved a month after she passed away. Do you know how much that would have helped my brother? That Social Security disability could have hired a part-time nurse for her on a daily basis. When they called him up a month after she passed and said, "Oh, your wife just got approved for Social Security," I don't think I need to tell you what he said on where for them to stick that. How devastating is that one? So how many people are riding the system? Skimming the system. When there's people out there, and I'm sure you know people that need it and can't get approved. And then you've got somebody else I know who plays mental, which is why I'm raising my grandson. Plays mental, played the game for years and years and years. Got Social Security disability. There's nothing wrong with her. She was smart as a whip. She was called a professional con artist. That's who's drawing a lot of Social Security disability. I'm not saying all. Please don't misunderstand me. You know people like that just as well as I do. Which leads me into another department. The Medicaid SNAP and WIC program. Section 8. HUD. Young, healthy people kicking out babies with how many baby daddies to get more and more funding and food stamps. And they dress better than you and I. Nails are this long, weaves, nice hair, fake eyelashes. Clearly, it ain't me. And yes, these are my nails, not fake. Don't do that. Yep, you know, the more kids you have, the more food stamps you get. It's common knowledge. And that EBT card that has the cash on it, SNAP program, the more dependents that you claim, the bigger the monthly check. And somebody who's healthy enough where you go to be nice to them and they beat the shit out of you, they're strong enough for that. Strong enough to riot, strong enough to protest down miles and miles and miles of streets. But they don't have time to work. No, can't do that. Gives you an idea who's stealing our taxes. Yep. And then they're going to go look into the Department of Education. Right? The D's are having a heart attack over that one. Let us into this building. We want to get into this building. I'm sure you've all seen the video. Maxine Waters is right up there. Well, I want to see your ID. Who are you to stand and not let us in? When did she and the others ever take an interest in that building? First of all, why? Why? When you've got your local school board and your local school board reports to the district school board, and that district school board is overseen by your state government. Isn't that enough? Why does the federal government have to tell a state government how to run their schools? Why do we need such big federal government? You know, the bigger our government gets, the easier it is to hide funds. Let me give you an example. CPS, Cook County. My favorite topic, Chicago schools. Their union deficit, Mayor Brandon Johnson. Who's the president of the union? Double dipping much? Get a mayor paycheck and president of the union of the CPS, Chicago Public Schools. They are screaming about elimination of federal Department of Education. Do you know why they're screaming? We want the money. We want the money. We want the money. Well, now wait a minute. Why should 49 other states be worried about CPS's funding for their own mismanagement of union dues, and they're in I forgot how many $1,000,000 deficit that they're in. Billion, I'm sorry, it's a $1,000,000,000 deficit that the Chicago Public School Union is in for their pension plan. That's their deficit. That's why they don't wanna lose federal funding. Now, why would that be federal government's problem? They're not in the union. Their noses shouldn't even be in the business of Illinois' school districts, as well as any other states. In fact, if you looked at a good majority, I think the number was 38 other states. Their grade point average is far higher than these Democratic states. Far higher. We got kids graduating high school, they still can't read. Pretty sad, isn't it? Oh, well, we don't have the funds. What's that got to do with a teacher that's more interested in teaching your kid about gender studies rather than teaching them how to read? Don't you think the ABCs and the grammar and handwriting and all that, don't you think that ought to come before gender studies? Seriously. It's the difference in the school systems from state to state. You know what's gonna be interesting? When Elon Musk opens up the books of the Department of Labor, the FBI, I can't wait. But the best one, do you remember? I think it was a day or 2 before 9/11, the Pentagon reported that they were missing I think it was $2 billion. Do you remember that? That was some of you might not be old enough. And then all of a sudden, when they brought that information to light, 2 days later, 9/11 happened to totally make you forget about that $2 billion that's missing from the Pentagon. Now they're gonna audit the Pentagon. I'm sure $2 billion grew to be many more. Here's the question I gotta ask. all these people, like Maxine Waters that wants to get in Department of Education, what is in that building, in that entity, that she is so scared to let anybody see? And the whole group standing behind her. What are they afraid of? Because when they get to the Pentagon, oh boy, they're already trying to impeach Trump. I can't remember who. I think it was that lawyer that was suing him for the real estate from New York. That long-haired woman, Letitia something. She's starting another lawsuit for an impeachment. Is the water getting too hot for you there, Letitia? Yeah, Letitia James. That's her name. Very interesting. But here's the thing. If you don't have anything to hide, and if your hands aren't in the cookie jar, why would you be against this? I welcome it with open arms. Please find out why we're obligated to pay so much in taxes. Please find out why our Social Security pot is running dry. Please find out. Please. And the ones that should be crying about Social Security pot running dry more than me is you people that are presently paying into it. Because when you go to retire, there isn't going to be anything. Where's the money that you're paying in? So, for those of us who play the game by the rules, we welcome an audit of every single department in the government. Elon and Vivek, have at it. Find every I and make sure it's dotted. Find every T and make sure it's crossed. Let there be no unanswered questions. Folks, be patient. This isn't going to happen like the flip of a switch. But you know what? Seems to be getting better and better every single day. We hear more and more and more every single day. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it. When they say we're in for a great awakening, I kind of think this is what they meant. You're going to see what your politicians are really doing to you. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see exactly what Washington, D.C. is all about. And do you know what you're going to find? All that misuse of funds. You're going to be a little hot under the collar. So, with that, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, sit back and enjoy the show. I hope you have a lovely Monday night. Keep on keeping on. Talk to you later. God bless you all.